What is going on, brothers and sisters? Astrologer Eric Rosen here. Wanted to talk to you about the complications that this full moon energy can cause, and not even just the full moon, but also a full moon in Gemini with Jupiter retrograde in its fall sign, as well as Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. And so this is the video that you're going to want to check out if you want to know how to understand how to avoid overwhelm, how you want to understand where your life is going when the mind just can't fathom it, how this is a precursor to this new era that we're moving into as a human race, especially when you factor in the Mars retrograde, and how there can actually be a beautiful flow and there can be subtle breakthroughs like going forward in your life, that it doesn't just have to be this gauntlet of mental anxiety and, places where we maybe slip up and screw ourselves over because we're following a train of thought that was actually based on a negative conditioned belief system, and then we go, oh shit, why did I do that? So, but before we get into it, I do want to say a few things. Number one, I do have a free ebook out about how to process grief. I feel like that's going to be a big thing building up into the spring, March 20th, especially around that time. So I have a free ebook out that you can download. The link will be down below. And then I'm doing a bi-weekly community that I'm doing it in person in St. Louis where I live, but I also have an online version too. I highly recommend that. It's all about intentionally coming into community to grieve and then alchemizing that grief so that you can step into true manifestation of what the divine is trying to give you in your life. Because the truth is our future is moving towards us. We're not moving towards it. But if we're stagnant with old emotions from the past, we can't really receive that. I also feel, I was writing about this too, it's like we're in this position where a lot of the things that we think that we really want with manifestations and that we're hungry for, especially with the Mars opposed Pluto in Leo and Cancer, it's some of this stuff is conditioned. This is like cultural conditioning and like childhood conditioning of stuff that we didn't really even want. And that's where I think the most conflict is that we're going to talk about today is, it's conflict of getting out of our own way is the short way to put it, but the longer version is how do we get out of the mental complexities and step more into an altruistic form of expression of ourselves to align with what the divine actually wants for us, instead of struggling trying to use the mind to go and get things that we think is going to create more safety or satisfaction, and it's an illusion. So, of course, as always, if you want to get an astrology reading, that link is down below as well. The people that are getting readings from me, doing sessions with me, are just writing rave reviews. I might even post one of them down below. And if you want to check out Pluto for your sun sign or for the next 20 years, or Destiny Tug of War, how to not play small, especially going into next year, out of planet shifting. I did that for all the sun and rising signs too for both these recordings. Those links will be down below as well. So first I want to say Jupiter doesn't like to be in Gemini because it's this big expander, right? It's going to expand everything. And in Gemini, it's all about the little things. The little things, our environment, our thoughts, our circumstances. So we can blow up big stories really easily about what's happening in our life. Maybe sometimes actually miss the facts and actually miss the subtle changes we can make in our behaviors and our mindset, our point of view, to take us to a better Jupiter place. And then you look at Mercury retrograde over in Sagittarius where it's at fall, because it's overwhelmed, because it wants to try to look at, the big picture, but it can't handle it all. So we're in a position where, it's flipped a little bit. It's almost like where the subconscious and the conscious aspects of mine in an interesting, weird way are like flipped, where, we're having to understand too much, where we can only focus on one thing at a time consciously. And then subconsciously, we're being asked to just like keep it fucking simple and like not try to process so much all at once for like some like big vision for our life, some big dream, reality that we're trying to create. And, there was someone in a community that I'm a part of, they were talking about, like the complications of like, am I doing the right thing? When to use the right tool? There's so much information that I have, but I don't always remember what it is or what tool to use or when to use it. And I find that because there's so much wonkiness with all these mental energies in this astrology right now, it's almost like it's like a pre-module thing, you know, like if you've ever like joined like some type of coursework or been, you know, in a school or something, they're like, hey, these videos or modules are optional. It's just like get your feet wet, you know, it's not for a grade or anything, but this is something that you can do, you know, to kind of like get used to the process. And it's like, you know, it's generally like your negative Nancy control based type A's that like will jump in and like be the, you know, teacher's pet and like get in and do it, and the other people are like, I just want to go live my life and be cool, you know, and just I'll just show up when it matters. But that's what's really weird and sneaky is like it's kind of like that, you know, where you can like get away with it and have some compassion if you're not like being an A student in your life and making transformational shifts in your mindset and outlook, those behavioral changes to become a better version of yourself, which it's not like a self-improvement thing. It's more like shedding skin to just become more of a divine aligned version of yourself that is really what's coming these next few months, where it's like the ideal spiritual version of yourself and how you express yourself in this reality can be one. You know, it's weird, but it's like taking this middle, you know, fluff part out of the Oreo cookie sandwich and like being more of a vibrational match to your spiritual essence and expressing it in the physical. But you know, we can get away with that, not take the pre-module and have compassion and slip up, but we can also like feel like much more relaxed and have less anxiety because we start to adapt to the new like divine program, which I've talked about this before, but you know, the mind wants to try to understand everything, but it's the only thing that's really separate from our essence of our energy, as human design shows us, that the mind thinks it knows everything and wants to process and make decisions, but actually human design shows that we're shifting from our mental outlook to this more intuitive solar plexus, where the mind moves into the solar plexus, actually, where we move from Homo sapien to Homo luminous, intuitive man, intuitive woman. And so then it's more about this rise of the sleeping phoenix era that we're moving into. We're moving out of an old 400-year cycle of the cross of planning, where it's like the mind's always wanting to plan and figure all this shit out and piece everything like a puzzle. So this pre-module is, can you put down the puzzle? Can you start to follow more of the intuitive gut solar plexus? How does your intuition operate? Like studying that, like if anything, it's like the research and all the facts that we're trying to get to help us in life. It's more so maybe like finding out, how does your intuition operate? Like, you know, human design is really great for that, but it's also just like seeing like what works for you by following your intuition, because the hard part is like with all this Pisces energy of Neptune and Saturn is, you know, and Saturn's a part of this full moon in Gemini, where, you know, it was part of the build up, and then it's also square Neptune, where it's like we can start to like misjudge the facts and circumstances of our life because we want more of a dreamy, idealistic version of things, and then our intuition is actually cheating us, trying to like create some hypothesis or facts that's not true and has nothing to do with what's actually going on in our lives. And so it's also not about like going the other flip of Pisces and getting like feeling like lost, despair, you know, just criticisms, judgments of self, consciously, subconsciously, and going, you know, it's never going to work out. That's why it's hard with Gemini, especially with Jupiter there. It can feel like your world, your reality, it's not ever going to change the circumstances. So but it's okay when we find these moments happening, because it's actually producing like the negative programming that's still there, that we're still operating in the mind. And this is part of the deconditioning process. We're deconditioning the old constructs of the last 400 years to step into the innate capacity of our human design. And so this is everything. It's like if you're trying to overly understand your relationships, why this relationship's working, why this one isn't, why this is leaving, why this money thing's working, why this is not, just the musical chairs. It's like we're going to be moving into a lot of more tribal community energy next year, like knowing who the fuck you are, like as a person, you know, both identity, spiritually wise, so that you don't feel like a coward in that community and you feel like weak in your contribution, where you actually know your role like in the communal aspect of things, and you're, you know, there's just a self-fulfilling prophecy of either defeat if you feel weak, or, you know, a sense of service, you know, to your community, the people that you connect with, when you know who you are and you know how to show up. And so the easiest way to know how to like let people know like what's coming, what to do with this energy now, how to not get overwhelmed, is like see that this is just the mind's last stands. Like this is a full moon reminding us there's so much going to be shifting that, you know, things just don't work in puzzles anymore. They never really did. It was just, it's almost like there was less consequence or repercussions, you know, like we didn't know any better, like we were in the more fluff period of spiritual ascension, and now we're not in that. We're moving into a lot of Aries energy of the spiritual warrior. And so it's like we're, you know, being asked to take a stand for the reality that we really want. And then it doesn't matter what the belief is, or the religion, astrology, anything. It's just, we still have to show up. You know, we find ways to show up. So when it comes to like what, you know, tool to use, it's like intuitively, just in the moment, you just know how to do it. There's no plan. There's no, I'm going to use this tool 2 hours from now, this, that, the other thing. It's like, yeah, we still have schedules and routines. Like it's not like those ever go away. It's just that we're at the end of that point of your cycle to where you have to ask yourself, like, were you planning those routines and planning to use those tools and structuring your schedule and reality based upon it being a puzzle? Or did you come to it from an intuitive standpoint? Because reminder, like Pluto and Aquarius, it's like things just all sync at once. It's way too much to understand the complexities of it, and it's good to have vulnerable conversations and just like drop the mask and talk about some of these messy struggles that we do have as we're transitioning. Like I don't think there's anyone that isn't going through some type of like internal combustion process where it's like melting away, like, you know, the past, yesteryear, like old identities, old ways of mindsets, beliefs, and all that. So we're clearing that stuff up. And so it's good to like talk about it and like let other people know, you know, so that we don't feel alone, and that we can be like, we got this. You know, that was actually something that came up in a astrology workshop that I did with another collaborator. We covered the Astrology 2025 at an in-person gathering. And she intuitively got the message, you know, like we needed to like raise our hands up in the air, like in a circle, and be like, we got this, you know. And I think that's something that we can all remind ourselves, you know, morning, afternoon, evening, is like, this is for the brave-hearted, you know. And it's okay to feel the vulnerability of stuff, but it's actually the moments that, you know, I've been channeling this, where it's like, where we feel fatigue, we don't have enough left in the tank. That's just the mind. That's the mind saying, I'm tired of this way of viewing reality and complicating things with puzzles. I'm tired of being overstimulated, overworked. I'm tired of the media's negativity. It's like the fatigue is the mind. You know, it's like exercise is always a good example. You know, trainers and athletes will tell you, it's like the body can go way further than the mind can. The mind always has this emergency threshold to say stop, because it's the ego trying to keep us in the comfort zone, to not take a risk, you know, where we go into discomfort. So it's seeing that in the same way that if we're having these thoughts of like, shit, I don't know if I can go on, or this is hard, you know, feel that, you know, and acknowledge that and talk about it, but also just encouragement not to, and it's not lacking empathy or compassion saying this, but it's like knowing that our hearts are strong. Like Mars retrograde in Leo is like, reminds us like, there's always more in the tank, you know, and we will be challenged to find that courage, to find that valor. And, you know, this is not about overcomplicating matters and communications with other people. It's hard because, you know, we might think that in order to make it fun or a good time that we have to like build some big story or share our whole life story about what's going on, or Could even be like being overly vulnerable or going completely the other way of like shutting down, numbing out, just like reclusing from people. And it's like, I think it's somewhere in the middle, as I mentioned, with the full moon horoscope that I had already put out on Gemini, but kind of going, it's more of a, 360 view around all this stuff. And some things that were showing up today in conversations with people, that it's like, we can just more speak to like what intuitively, factually, how we're viewing our life, and being okay with that. And some people might cringe over that, and some people it's good because it's like, oh cool, like me too, like I feel that way too. And I think it gets overcomplicated too. People try to be the Sag guru and try to get in there and coach people, because it's like they think just because there's some level of like factual honesty that means that they need to be fucking rescued. And it's like, I think this is looking at martyr complexes and where do we try to like rescue other people, and it's actually getting involved in their karma and their drama, where we it's too painful to look at our own circumstances, and so we try to get like some dopamine hit, rush, feel good energy of being of service to help others, when we have to really check in and go, fuck, is this really an integrity? What if we're jumping into someone's caterpillar moment, trying to help them become a butterfly, and we're a caterpillar, and then both of our processes are off kilter, off center, they're not balanced because we're not allowing the natural organic process to flow, and it becomes inorganic. So, there's opportunities here to see that we don't have to struggle anymore with the mental complications of things, that we can kind of go, okay, let me use my senses, let me use my more spiritual, subtle, hermetic mind senses too, where it's like, okay, let me just like observe and become aware, and not be circling in trains of thought to try to like create some fun or stimulus moments or some chase in life. I think people got to watch for how they're showing up. Communication. This could be just like driving around in your local city. This can be greed, avarice, like something that's trying to like, you're going into like a dark place where it's like you're maybe exhausted, that it's like the second coming hasn't like shown up yet, or something like of the collective, like Christ consciousness, or the second coming of Jesus, or someone to rescue you. And while we try to rescue other people, and then we're start to go, okay, well, let's just go to the more traditional route of padding things with material goods. But it's like, if it lacks the spiritual substance for your deeper motivation and why, that's how that it's off the path. And something that came through today too, where I was like, fuck, it's like, are we in a position with Uranus in Taurus and then Pluto now in Aquarius, where people are like wanting to like establish some form of like long-term wealth or gain for themselves, but what if we're all gonna go through the same reset, where in some ways, whether it's energetic or physical, where we all feel like we all got hit the reset button, in some abundance, prosperity, financial way. It's like, people talk about abundance and prosperity coming, and it's like, well, it's Jupiter and Gemini, like, like to me, it's like playing fucking like tokens at like Chuck E. Cheese or something, and being like you hit big and cool, you get to go get your little prize, and then you don't realize that it costs 30 cents to make it, and you spent $3 trying to win that thing. And it's like too much effort to change behavior or create prosperity or abundance. And it's like we have to look at like the efforts that we're putting in things too, and going like, is there actually a factual ROI? Like, does it actually make sense for our lives, instead of trying to like win on a scratch off a lottery ticket? These are just things to remind ourselves that we, when it comes to like the more abundant, prosperous, standpoint of things, that we are better off just knowing that deeper spiritual path of service that feels like the divine flowing through us, to where we're always going to have what we need. And it's not about like some big lottery ticket moment, because if we did go through a reset, if we did go through that, then what? Then your life was based upon the meaninglessness of just money and material goods, right? Or, your ego. Like honestly, like there's some people I see that they're just doing this thing where it's like, it's the Mars and Leo egoic thing, where they're doing things because they have wants, and it's their ego wants, and it's not actually guided by spirit. It's not actually guided by the divine. And the best part is we get to have both when we choose that divine path. This is not a time for just wanting more and more and more and more and not being patient. It's about the patience to go. In some ways, this astrology that's coming, where it's about loss, grief release, releasing the conditioning of, what we thought the dream was, or what we thought that we were going to gain. The humble nature of being spiritual, not being so fucking sensational, right? Like not falling into the Pisces part of like being manic, right? And then like not factual with all this energy of going, cool, celebrate the wins and put it on fucking social media or something. But it's like, did you talk about the grief or the losses? Do you talk about when it doesn't work? Do you talk about when things don't work? Or is there just like a bypass that we do to try to act like fucking things are just always going according to some plan? And it's like the mind doesn't know what the plan is. And so, I might be preaching a little bit here, but I think our best opportunity, is to keep dropping into the courage of the heart and the intuition to look at our lives and the facts, and that it's not about an overly complex self-examination. It's more of just like a surrender of allowing self-awareness to find us, that can even be a little scary for the ego, because in those moments, it's a reminder like we really do not have control into this new era of providence that we're going in. And it is an era of providence, but part of the ego's thing is it always likes to be in a fight and a battle. When you go into an era of providence where you're protected, the ego's got to find a new role. And I think that role could be that spiritual warrior, that warrior in the garden, where we drop the drama and the conflict and the chase and just all these things. And so, but we can't see what that looks like fully yet, because, the material reflection of the construction of that reality hasn't fully arrived. And so that's why we're in the pre-module phase. And so, sort of like a red pill, blue pill thing, where it's like, yeah, we can struggle and go the adrenaline rush in the mind and all these things, or we can go into these spaces of, going, okay, well, let's be the fucking Zen master, the Taoist, the theories of like not giving everything 100% all the time, and going into more of like put in the effort, the responsibility of life, but also like pauses, reflections to see, is that return on investment there, especially spiritually, of like actually feeling fulfilled and happy. So these are like real honest like check-ins with ourselves. So I love you all. If you want to get astrology reading, you want those specials for your sun sign, those are down below. And then of course all the grief hardware that you need, the free ebook, and then of course the online and in-person gathering. That first one's going to be Monday. Let's see, today's the 13th. I'm screwing my dates up lately, so I'm actually just going to check. And I want to pull a card too. It's the 14th today. So it's the 16th is the first one, and then it'll be bi-weekly. It's so funny. I was like, I'm gonna put my cards by the camera so that I don't have to go reaching for them like I always do, and I still happen to put them the spot on my desk. I still had to reach for them. Which, maybe there's some symbolism in that too. That's out known in Libra, of not overextending and overreaching, getting unhinged and unbalanced, and especially with our thinking, too much weighing things out. Just a reminder that we've been going through that for 17 months. We got less than 1 month to go. The nodes shift on the 11th. I'll be talking about that a lot in January, because that's a 1.5 year transit. The nodes are so muy importante, so many implications in astrology. It's the thing that I pay attention to the most, because it's always letting us know where we're going, what we're moving away from. And so, celebrate that whatever mastery and healing you've done on yourself with Nord, Node, Chiron, and Aries this past 17 months, that's where we were supposed to head. And any patterns you've been shedding in relationships, codependency, like not being a bump on a log and just, trying to expect a happy sunset without action, just all these different components that I'm sure it hasn't went according to your ego's plan identification, Nord, Node, Chiron, and Aries. But, what if there was some trickster energy in there spiritually, to prepare us for these next few years, so that it doesn't have to be the hardcore unplugging that is going to happen all at once. Like when people were so plugged in and they're like, what do you mean all religions are bullshit? What do you mean that the jab was all fake and forged? And what do you mean that there's this thing with ETs, but it's not the way that we were told in the movies and the understanding, or that it's different, all those disclosures that come. So you got the Fool card reverse. So that's a tough one. It's the first card of the deck, but in reversal, it's like, it's not the village idiot that's innocent that's allowed to be that, and that's a good thing. This is like, where are we actually being dumb, unfortunately? Where are we not checking the facts with our life? Where are we, going into spaces where we're tripping ourselves out with our own patterns? We're still doing that same thing in song and dance again. It's like, and we all have to look at this. I have to look at it. But I think that we can start to get out of some of the anxiety that's probably been building up during this full moon. We can let that go. So it's like, I feel like these cards are telling us we can come to more of a grounded place. But then as I say that, we get the Four of Wands in the reverse position. So it's like, where do we need to find more center still, more stability, where it's not so much freaking out about the future and not paying attention, and bumping into walls of our patterns and being too foolish. I think we need to come back to that center, and it's all reversals today. It's unfortunate, but Nine of Cups in reverse. So it's really not so much about the emotional fulfillment, that we want to chase or create. These are just very practical measures. It can produce a sense of restlessness, like how are we going to get there? Full moon in Gemini, the circumstances staying the same. But I think eventually, once we get out of these trains of thought of not feeling like things are maybe working out in the old school way that makes us feel stable. This is a lot about stability, not feeling anxious and emotions, but you get to this Four of Pentacles, it's like, okay, cool. Now we just take care of the basics, the foundations, right? Like your health, your wealth, your routine. It's a weird energy because there's so much shifting spiritually, but then it's almost like we're being asked to be simple and basic and not worry too much about all the what ifs and the hypotheticals and the things that we want to do or that we're going to do or should do, and just going, well, what's just that next thing that's just going to iron things out. And maybe there's a lot of trust with that Pluto Mars opposition to go, well, maybe it's not about hungry and chasing these levels of fulfillment that's creating a lack of poise and anxiety, that it's going to be more so about it finding us and filling our own cup, and allowing that future to flow into us, where, cool. We met the vibrational alignment just by doing our due diligence in our life to make sure that it's stable, and therefore we're in a good position for positive surprises, blessings, and things to find us. So I love you all. We'll see you next time.